and welcome back to today's episode number 11, where we're going to look at some small diaphragm condenser mics. So I figured the simplest thing to do would be to look at a couple of mics from opposite ends of the spectrum. First one, a nice, simple, and quite cheap Samson. This is a Samson C02. It's a very small SDC mic, and it's got a couple of unusual features. The main one, and I'm pretty positive that most people don't even notice, is that the capsule unscrews. So you can take off the actual condenser element from the end of the microphone, and I think the theory goes that you could put alternative ones on. So you could probably put on an Omni or a figure of 8, even hypercardioid. Nobody seems to do that on these microphones. You just buy them as they are. They're quite small, they're quite neat, they sound fairly pleasant, and they're quite cheap. My favourites that I've been collecting over the years, the AKG C01. It's a bit of a strange mic because you can buy these brand new now, but the latest version of these microphones does not feature an interchangeable capsule, whereas the old ones, like these, did. So again, we've got a small, in this case the condenser capsule, and it attaches to the mic with a realistically tiny thread. It's a micro thread, and one of the common things with these microphones, if you ever buy them second hand, is that people will have cross-threaded them, and so the capsules are jammed on and you can't get them off. So that's always a little tip to make sure that that hasn't happened in a case where you want to buy one. Now, the AKGs, even second hand, are going for quite a lot of money at the moment, but they do have one or two little extra things that come in very handy. This is another CK451E. But this CK451E has been split into two parts. So this little black tube has the socket at the top and the plug at the bottom. So the microphone preamp is in the bottom section and you remote that. Now, it seems a bit pointless, but it's actually really handy for circumstances where what it looks like is as important as what it sounds like. I use them on opera singers. I use them sometimes even on pianos. If you've got a grand piano and you've got a bit of a picky player, if the pianist is a classical person and extremely serious about their music, if you try and stick a couple of AKG 414s on them, which I quite like to do, they often sort of look and think, ooh, what's that? They're also worried that they might, the weight of the microphone might make them droop and hit the strings. And to be honest, that's actually something that's quite common. Microphone stands are notorious for drooping with heavy mics on. But these can give you the microphone capsule in exactly the right place without it being too obtrusive at all. It's rather nice. So they're good for voices, they're good for all sorts of instruments, and of course they're really quite nice for guitars. I'm sure we've all seen those YouTube videos where people they're recording a guitar and there's an ugly great microphone in the shot. It's a lovely classical guitar or an acoustic, and there's this ridiculous looking microphone plonked right in front of the soundhole looking really quite ugly. So these things can come in quite handy. And again, expect to pay more for this extension tube than you do for the Samson. The Samson microphone is more expensive than the really silly cheap ones, but it's a sensible price and it's pretty decent quality. But that extension tube will probably cost you twice what you pay for the microphone, for that Samson microphone, which is a bit of a shock. But I rather like them. They do come in silver versions as well, although the black one is far more common. And they do also do a really long version of it as well, so that you could actually put the preamp section in a floor stand right out of the way, and then the little thin arm will go up. You actually see it in a couple of other quite well thought of brands. Show-ups do them, and a few others, but you can use these in places where traditionally getting a microphone is a sort of thing we get frowned at, and it does a rather nice little job of sort of keeping the mic in a sensible place. The test we're going to do today, the Samson C02, the AKG C451, it's the E version, and we'll plonk those on my semi-acoustic guitar and you can have a listen. I figured what I'd do is record my terrible playing from a fairly close perspective and put the microphone, only one, at varying places. So I've put one towards the right as I'm looking down at the guitar, so it favours the fingerboard, which will give us a little bit more finger noise. And then swapping it round, I'll put it so that the neck of the guitar is more in the null of the microphone, and then we should be able to get more of the sound hole tone without the finger noise. That's the basic idea for the test. I have never liked the notion that two microphones are going to record a guitar in stereo. My take on recording acoustic guitars is that to a large degree they're a mono instrument. Now, I accept the fact that the sound hole makes a different noise to the noise that comes off the strings, but the strings are not the primary sound source, are they? Most of the sound of the guitar is coming from the body. That noise that comes from the fingers might well be nice for a bit of extra feel in certain songs where that noise of your finger on the strings adds a little something. But realistically, the guitar is the section that's in front of you. Now, to anybody in an audience, it's mono. There is a guitar in the middle of the stage or wherever you are, and you've got a mono sound. If you're in the studio, you can use two microphones, and you can use the classic XY technique. You can put them like that. You could space them. You could do whatever you like. But essentially, you're just taking two microphone sounds and blending them to make them sound better. Now, I really can't go for this idea that you take the neck sound and pan it left, and you take the body sound and pan it right, and that's stereo. It's not stereo. It's two different sounding sources that make a manufactured type of sound of a guitar. Well, guitars don't sound like that. The guitar is almost a mono instrument, and in a big acoustic space, using a stereo technique at a distance will give you a bit more of the room, which will sound nice. But the actual microphone itself is pointing at a mono instrument. So if we've got two microphones and they're at an angle to each other, a typical coincident pair, well, neither of them are really aiming at a sensible place. One is missing the sound hole on one side, and one is pointing at the fingerboard where all the noise is. So close in, two microphones to a guitar like that really don't, for me, cut it. I would much prefer the sound of one microphone. If I have two microphones, because I need to capture perhaps the sound from the fingerboard that's absolutely crucial for a certain player's technique, then I'll have two microphones pointing at the two different parts of the guitar. I'll blend them together, and probably the pan controls will be very, very close together. Maybe a tiny bit of shift, just to spread it away from that centre position. But certainly, I can't subscribe to the notion that a guitar is a stereo instrument. I never record them in stereo, but I very often use artificial stereo reverb. Draw from that what you think. But so many people I read about talking about recording guitars in stereo and using stereo techniques that are meant to be used at a distance, close in. I don't think it works. That's my take on it, and I doubt very much that I'll ever change my mind on that one. working with some really good classical guitar people in the past, I was told very firmly, I like the sound of one microphone. Okay, I went along with it, and he was quite right. On his guitar, the microphone sounded absolutely wonderful. The balance between the neck sound and the sound hole sound was balanced by the guitar itself. So anybody sitting in the audience during one of his concerts got the right sound, and that's how he liked it. I liked it too. So for me, I'm not bothered about stereo on a guitar at all. So there's some samples now that you can have a listen to. Have a look and see where the two different microphones are. I've tried to match the positions pretty consistently so that I can mix from one to the other, and you can see what the difference between the 451 and the C02 is. Now, judging on our experiments over the past 10 videos or so, the differences between the microphones are much more subtle than we might think. In this particular case, the price difference between these two microphones is quite extreme. As to whether you think the captured sound reflects the price difference, that's totally up to you. So I'll see you in the next video. Don't forget, hit the subscribe button, have a look, see what you think. Let me know in the comments below. Take care. Bye.